I came home late one evening, exhausted from a long day at work. As soon as I stepped through the door, I noticed my wife, Emily, sitting on the couch with an anxious look on her face. She'd been acting strangely for weeks, but tonight something felt different. "Hey, Dopagoy," she greeted me with a forced smile. "How was your day?" "Long and tiring," I replied, dropping my briefcase by the door. "What about you?" "Oh, the usual," she said, her eyes darting away from mine. "Work, meetings, the usual." I could sense something was off. Emily was never this evasive. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, everything's fine." But everything was not fine. A few days later, I found out the truth in the most unexpected way. I was at a company event, mingling with colleagues, when I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. "Did you hear about Emily and her boss, Mr. Richardson?" One of my colleagues whispered to another. "Apparently, they've been having an affair for months." I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. Emily, my wife, had been cheating on me with her boss. Furious and devastated, I decided to confront her that night. When I got home, Emily was already in bed. I stormed into the bedroom, my anger barely contained. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaking. She looked up at me, startled. "What's going on?" "I know about you and Mr. Richardson," I said, the words coming out like venom. "I know you've been sleeping with him." Her face paled, and she sat up, tears welling in her eyes. "Dopagoy, please, let me explain." "Explain?" I spat. "How do you explain betraying our marriage? It was just business," she said, her voice breaking. "I wanted a career and I got it. It didn't mean anything. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Just business? You sold yourself for a promotion? I will sue your lover." Emily started crying, her hands trembling. "Please, Dopagoy, Donti. It wasn't like that. I made a mistake, but I didn't love him." Her excuses only fueled my anger. "You're a selfish woman, Emily. You think only about yourself." She sobbed uncontrollably, but I couldn't find any sympathy for her. "Get out of my sight," I said coldly. "I need time to think." As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't believe how my life had turned upside down. Emily S. betrayal cut deep, and I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. The road ahead was uncertain, and the emotional scars would take a long time to heal. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a series of emotional betrayals and neo-life events that would test the very fabric of our relationship. The following morning, I woke up with a sense of dread hanging over me. Emily had already left for work, but I couldn't stay in the house. I needed to clear my head. I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood, hoping the fresh air would help me think. As I walked, memories of our life together flooded my mind. Emily and I had met in college and fell in love almost instantly. We got married a year after graduation, and everything seemed perfect. We had dreams and plans for the future, but now those dreams felt like they were shattering into a million pieces. I found myself at a nearby park, sitting on a bench, lost in thought. I knew I needed to confront Mr. Richardson, Emily's boss. I couldn't just let this go without addressing the man who had played a part in destroying my marriage. That afternoon, I went to Emily's office building. I knew it was risky, but my anger and need for answers outweighed any fear of confrontation. I marched into the lobby and demanded to see Mr. Richardson. "Do you have an appointment?" the receptionist asked, eyeing me warily. "No, but he all want to see me," I replied, my voice firm. After a tense few minutes, I was escorted to Mr. Richardson's office. He looked up as I entered, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "Dopagoy, isn't it?" he said, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. "Yes, and you know why I am here," I said, barely able to contain my rage. "Look, I understand you are upset," he began, but I cut him off. "Upset? You've been sleeping with my wife and you think I'm just upset?" I snapped. "You've ruined my marriage." Mr. Richardson sighed, leaning back in his chair. "It's not that simple. Emily and I, we had an arrangement. It was mutual. Mutual? She's my wife," I shouted, my fists clenching. "How dare you use her for your own gain?" "It wasn't like that," he insisted. "We are both adults. It was a decision we made together." I could feel the fury boiling inside me. "I don't care about your excuses. I will make sure you pay for this." He raised an eyebrow. Are you threatening me? You bet I am, I said, turning on my heel and storming out of his office. I didn't have a concrete plan yet, but I knew I couldn't let him get away with this. When I got home, Emily was waiting for me, her eyes red from crying. Where have you been? She asked, her voice trembling. I went to see your boss, I said coldly. She paled, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God, Dopogoy, what did you do? Nothing yet, I replied. But I'm not letting this go. You betrayed me, Emily. You broke our vows. She sobbed, falling to her knees. Please, Dopogoy, I'll do anything to make it right. I love you. Love? I scoffed. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You have destroyed everything we had. We spent the rest of the evening in a painful silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. The woman I once loved seemed like a stranger to me now, and I didn't know if our relationship could survive this betrayal. Over the next few days, I began to see a different side of Emily. She was desperate to fix things, constantly apologizing, trying to show her remorse. But every time I looked at her, all I could see was her betrayal. The trust we had built over the years had been shattered, and I wasn't sure if it could ever be repaired. In the coming weeks, I would learn more about Emily S. affair, uncovering secrets that would push me further into a world of emotional turmoil and betrayal. This was just the beginning of a journey that would test my strength and resolve in ways I never imagined. As the days turned into weeks, the reality of Emily S. betrayal began to sink in. I tried to keep myself busy with work, friends, and anything that could distract me from the constant pain gnawing at my heart. But no matter what I did, thoughts of Emily and Mr. Richardson haunted me. One evening, as I sat in our living room, Emily approached me cautiously. Dopogoy, can we talk? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked up from the book I was pretending to read. What is it, Emily? I want to come clean about everything, she said, tears welling in her eyes. I need to tell you the whole truth. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Go ahead. She took a deep breath. It wasn't just once. It happened multiple times over several months. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had suspected it was more than a one-time mistake, but hearing her admit it was another blow. How could you? I asked, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. I was desperate, she said, sobbing. I wanted to succeed in my career and he promised to help me. I thought it would be just one time, but it turned into something more. I felt trapped, and I didn't know how to get out. Trapped, I scoffed. You could have come to me. We could have figured something out together. Instead, you chose to betray me over and over again. I know, she cried. I was weak and selfish. I thought I could handle it, but it spiraled out of control. I am so sorry, Dopogoy. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. Sorry doesn't cut it, Emily. You've broken my trust. How do you expect me to ever believe anything you say again? She fell to her knees, clutching at my legs. Please, Dopogoy, give me another chance. I love you, and I want to make this right. I looked down at her, feeling a mixture of anger, sadness, and pity. I don't know if I can, Emily. You've shattered everything we had. That night, I slept on the couch, unable to bear the thought of sharing a bed with her. The next morning, I woke up feeling even more exhausted and confused. I needed to talk to someone who could help me make sense of my emotions. I decided to call my best friend Mike. He had been my rock through thick and thin, and I knew I could count on him for support. Hey Mike, can we meet up? I really need to talk. Of course, man, he replied. How about we grab a coffee? We met at our favorite coffee shop, and as soon as I saw Mike, I felt a wave of relief. We ordered our drinks and found a quiet corner to sit in. So, what's going on? Mike asked, concern etched on his face. I took a deep breath and told him everything Emily S. affair, her confession, and my struggle to cope with the betrayal. He listened patiently, nodding and offering words of comfort. Dopogoy, this is a tough situation, he said when I finished. But you need to decide what's best for you. Do you think you can forgive her and rebuild your trust, or is it time to move on? I honestly don't know, I admitted. Part of me still loves her, but the other part is so angry and hurt. Take your time, Mike advised. You don't have to make a decision right away. But remember, you deserve to be happy and at peace. His words gave me some clarity, but I knew the road ahead would be long and challenging. Emily and I continued to live under the same roof, but the tension between us was palpable. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was strained and awkward. One evening, I decided to look through Emily's phone. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her affair. As I scrolled through her messages, I stumbled upon a conversation that made my blood run cold. It was a series of texts between Emily and Mr. Richardson, discussing their encounters in explicit detail. They talked about meeting up in hotels, the thrill of sneaking around, and their plans for the future. It was clear that their relationship had been more than just a means to advance her career. I felt a surge of rage and betrayal. Emily had lied to me again, downplaying the extent of her affair. I stormed into the living room where she was sitting. "I found your messages," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "You told me it was just about your career, but it is clear you had feelings for him." Emily's face turned pale. "Dopagoy, please, I can explain." "Explain? There's nothing to explain. You've lied to me again and again. I'm done, Emily. I can't do this anymore." She broke down in tears, but I couldn't find it in myself to comfort her. I packed a bag and left the house, needing space to think and breathe. As I drove aimlessly, I realized that my marriage was beyond repair. The trust had been broken too many times, and I couldn't see a way to rebuild it. I decided to stay with Mike for a few days, needing the support of a friend to get through this difficult time. As I lay on his couch that night, I knew I had to start thinking about my future one without Emily. It was a daunting thought, but I knew it was the only way to find peace and happiness again. Living with Mike was a temporary relief from the storm brewing in my life. The first few nights were rough. I barely slept, tossing and turning on his couch, replaying the betrayal in my mind. Mike did his best to distract me, taking me out to bars and introducing me to his friends, but nothing seemed to shake the heavy weight on my heart. One evening, as we sat on his patio with a couple of beers, Mike turned to me with a serious look. "Dopagoy, you can keep running away from this. You need to figure out your next steps." I sighed, staring into my drink. "I know, but it is just so hard to think about the future when everything feels so shattered." "Have you considered talking to a lawyer?" Mike suggested gently. "Just to understand your options?" I nodded. "I've thought about it. I guess it is time to take that step." The next day, I made an appointment with a divorce lawyer. Sitting in the lawyer's office was surreal. It felt like the final nail in the coffin of my marriage. We discussed the legal process, division of assets, and what steps I needed to take moving forward. "You'll need to gather all your financial documents," the lawyer advised, "and it would be beneficial to document any evidence of infidelity, should it come to that." I nodded, feeling a mix of determination and sadness. "Thank you. I'll get everything together." That evening, I went back to the house to collect my things. Emily was there, and the atmosphere was tense. She watched silently as I packed up my belongings. "Dopagoy, please, can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling. "There's nothing left to say, Emily," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I am moving on." She started crying, but I couldn't let myself be swayed by her tears. I finished packing and left the house, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. Living with Mike helped me start rebuilding my life. I focused on my work, took up new hobbies, and spent more time with friends. Slowly, I began to feel like myself again. One day, while at a coffee shop, I ran into an old college friend, Sarah. We hadn't seen each other in years, and it was a pleasant surprise. We caught up on each other's lives, and I found myself enjoying her company more than I expected. "Do you want to grab dinner sometime?" she asked, her smile warm and inviting. I hesitated for a moment, thinking about how complicated my life had become, but then I realized that I deserved a chance at happiness. "I'd like that," I replied, smiling back. Our dinner turned into several dates, and before long, Sarah and I were spending a lot of time together. She was understanding about my situation and never pushed me to move faster than I was comfortable with. One evening, as we walked through a park, I opened up to her about my past. "I am still dealing with the fallout from my marriage," I admitted. "It has been really hard." Sarah squeezed my hand. I can imagine what you've been through, but I'm here for you, Dopagoy. Take all the time you need. Her kindness and patience helped me heal. I started to see a future that didn't revolve around my past pain. I still had moments of doubt and sadness, but they were becoming fewer and farther between. Emily, meanwhile, tried to reach out to me several times. She sent long messages apologizing and begging for another chance. But I couldn't go back. The trust was gone, and there was no way to rebuild what had been so thoroughly broken. One day, as I was sorting through some old papers, I found a letter from Emily. It was heartfelt and full of remorse, but I couldn't let it sway me. I had to keep moving forward. I continued seeing Sarah, and our relationship grew stronger. She was a bright spot in my life, and being with her made me realize that I could find happiness again. We took trips together, explored new places, and built new memories that weren't tainted by the past. The legal process of the divorce dragged on, but with each step I felt a little lighter. Emily and I settled things amicably, and I focused on closing that chapter of my life. Months later, as I stood in my new apartment, looking out at the city skyline, I felt a sense of peace. It had been a long and painful journey, but I was finally finding my way. With Sarah by my side and a renewed sense of purpose, I knew that I could face whatever the future held. As the months rolled by, I began to find my footing in my new life. Living in my own apartment brought a sense of independence and peace that I hadn't felt in years. My relationship with Sarah was blossoming, and her presence was a constant source of comfort and joy. One Saturday morning, as we lay in bed, Sarah turned to me with a curious look. "Do you ever think about what happened with Emily?" she asked gently. I sighed, staring at the ceiling. "Sometimes. It's hard not to, but I'm trying to focus on the future, on us." She smiled and snuggled closer. "I'm glad to hear that. I just want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what." We spent that day exploring the city, visiting museums, and trying out new restaurants. It was a perfect day, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy. However, the past had a way of creeping back into my life. One evening, as Sarah and I were having dinner at a cozy little bistro, I received a call from Emily. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Dopagoy, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice strained. I stepped outside to take the call, leaving Sarah at the table. "What is it, Emily?" "It's about work," she said. "Mr. Richardson is being investigated for misconduct, and I might get dragged into it. I need your help." I felt a pang of irritation. After everything, she still expected me to help her. "Emily, I don't know if I can help you. You're on your own. Please, Dopagoy," she pleaded. "I don't know what to do." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I'll think about it, but I can promise anything." I hung up and went back inside, feeling conflicted. Sarah looked at me with concern. "Is everything okay?" "Just some work stuff," I lied. "Nothing to worry about." But it was hard to shake the feeling that Emily's troubles would somehow affect me. A few days later, I received a subpoena to testify in the investigation against Mr. Richardson. I knew I had to go, even if it meant reopening old wounds. The day of the hearing was tense. I sat in the courtroom, waiting for my turn to testify. When I finally took the stand, I recounted what I knew about Emily's affair and how it had impacted our marriage. It was painful to relive those moments, but I knew it was necessary. Mr. Richardson sat across from me, his face devoid of emotion. When it was his turn to speak, he tried to downplay the affair, claiming it had no bearing on his professional conduct. But the evidence was stacked against him, and it was clear that he was in deep trouble. After the hearing, Emily approached me outside the courtroom. "Thank you for being honest," she said, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I did what I had to do," I replied, my voice cold. "But this doesn't change anything between us." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I am just sorry for everything." As I walked away, I felt a sense of closure. The hearing had been a painful experience, but it also helped me realize that I had made the right decision in moving on. Sarah was waiting for me at home, her arms open and welcoming. "How did it go?" she asked, holding me close. "It was tough," I admitted. "But it's just over now. I can finally put it behind me." She smiled, kissing me softly. I am proud of you, Dopagoy. You've come so far. With the investigation behind me, I focused on building a future with Sarah. We traveled together, exploring new places and creating beautiful memories. I threw myself into my work, finding new challenges and opportunities for growth. One evening, as we watched the sunset from my apartment balcony, Sarah turned to me with a thoughtful expression. Have you ever thought about what you want for the future? She asked. I took her hand in mine, feeling a warmth spread through me. I want to build a life with you, Sarah, a future where we support and love each other no matter what. Her eyes sparkled with happiness. I want that too, Dopagoy, more than anything. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized that I had finally found peace. The pain of the past was still there, but it no longer defined me. With Sarah by my side, I was ready to embrace whatever the future held. Life was finally settling into a new normal. Sarah and I were growing closer every day, and I felt happier than I had in years. But as with any story, unexpected twists were bound to happen. One evening, Sarah and I decided to try a new Italian restaurant that had just opened downtown. The atmosphere was cozy and inviting, and we settled into a corner table, excited for a night out. Halfway through our meal, I noticed a familiar face walking into the restaurant. It was Emily. She hadn't seen us yet, but the sight of her brought a rush of emotions I thought I had buried. She was with a group of colleagues, laughing and chatting as they made their way to a table across the room. Are you okay? Sarah asked, noticing my sudden change in demeanor. Yeah, I am fine, I said, forcing a smile. It is just Emily S. here. Sarah glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. Do you want to leave? No, I said, shaking my head. We deserve to enjoy our night out. We tried to focus on our conversation, but it was hard to ignore Emily S.'s presence. I could feel her eyes on us, and when I finally looked up, she was staring right at me. She gave me a small, sad smile, and then looked away. Later that night, as we were leaving the restaurant, Emily approached us in the parking lot. Dopagoy, can we talk for a minute? She asked, her voice tentative. I exchanged a quick glance with Sarah, who nodded. I'll give you some space, she said, squeezing my hand before stepping back. What is it, Emily? I asked, my tone neutral. I just wanted to apologize again, she said, her eyes glistening with tears. I know I have said it before, but seeing you tonight made me realize how much I have hurt you, and I am truly sorry. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. Thank you for saying that, but I have moved on, Emily. We both need to. She nodded, wiping away a tear. I know. I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me someday. I didn't respond, and she turned and walked back to her friends. Sarah rejoined me, slipping her arm through mine. You okay? She asked softly. Yeah, I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I think I am. As time went on, I found myself thinking less and less about Emily. The encounter at the restaurant had given me a sense of closure I didn't realize I needed. Sarah and I continued to build our life together, and I focused on the future rather than the past. One day, as Sarah and I were having brunch at our favorite cafe, she brought up something that took me by surprise. Dopagoy. I have been thinking about us, she said, her eyes serious. About our future. What about it? I asked, intrigued. I love you, she said, reaching across the table to take my hand. And I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I felt a rush of emotion. I love you too, Sarah. Then let's make it official, she said, her smile widening. Let's get married. I stared at her, stunned. It wasn't that I hadn't thought about it, I had many times, but hearing her say it out loud made it real. Are you serious? Absolutely, she said, her eyes sparkling. I want to be with you forever, Dopagoy. Will you marry me? I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes as I nodded. Yes, Sarah. Yes, I'll marry you. We celebrated our engagement with a bottle of champagne, and I couldn't help but feel like the luckiest man in the world. After everything I had been through, I had found someone who truly loved me and wanted to build a future together. As we started planning our wedding, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come. The pain and betrayal of the past were still there, but they no longer defined me. With Sarah by my side, I was ready to face whatever challenges life threw our way. Our wedding day was perfect. Surrounded by friends and family, we exchanged vows and promised to love and support each other for the rest of our lives. As I looked into Sarah's eyes, I knew that I had finally found my forever. But life has a funny way of testing us when we least expect it. Just as I thought everything was falling into place, a new challenge arose that would test our relationship and my resolve. Married life with Sarah was everything I had hoped for and more. We settled into a comfortable routine, enjoying the small moments of everyday life together. Our honeymoon in Italy had been magical, and the photos we took adorned the walls of our apartment, reminding us of our beautiful beginning. One evening, a few months after our wedding, I received a phone call that would change everything. It was from my boss, Mr. Thompson. "Dopagoy, we need to talk," he said, his tone grave. "Can you come to the office tomorrow morning? Is everything okay?" I asked, my heart sinking. "We'll discuss it tomorrow," he replied before hanging up. The next morning, I arrived at the office feeling a sense of foreboding. Mr. Thompson called me into his office and closed the door behind me. "Have a seat, Dopagoy," he said, gesturing to a chair. I sat down, trying to read his expression. "What's this about, sir?" "There's been an issue with one of our major clients," he began, leaning forward. "They claim there's been some irregularities in the reports you've been handling. They're accusing you of misconduct." I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. "What? That's impossible. I have always been meticulous with my work." He sighed. "I believe you, but we need to conduct a thorough investigation. Until then, I am afraid we'll have to suspend you." The word suspend hit me like a ton of bricks. My career, which I had worked so hard to build, was suddenly in jeopardy. "But sir, I assure you there's been a mistake." "I hope you are right," Mr. Thompson said, his voice softer. "We'll get to the bottom of this. But for now, you need to step away." Leaving the office that day felt like walking through a fog. I couldn't believe what was happening. When I got home, Sarah was waiting for me, concern etched on her face. "What is he wrong?" she asked, immediately sensing my distress. I explained everything, my voice trembling. "They were suspending me, Sarah. They think I did something wrong." She wrapped her arms around me, her embrace warm and reassuring. "We'll get through this, Dopagoy. I believe in you." But the days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. The investigation dragged on, and the uncertainty took a toll on me. Sarah was my rock, constantly encouraging me and reminding me that we would overcome this challenge together. One evening, as we sat on the couch, Sarah turned to me with a determined look. "We need to figure out who's behind this. Someone must be trying to sabotage you." I nodded, feeling a surge of resolve. "You are right. But where do we start? Do you have any enemies at work?" she asked. "Anyone who might want to see you fail?" I thought about it, going over my interactions with colleagues and clients. One name stood out: Brad. He had always been competitive and had a history of underhanded tactics. "There's one person," I said slowly. "Brad. He's always been jealous of my success." "Then we need to find proof," Sarah said firmly. "Let us start by going through your work emails and files." Over the next few days, we combed through every document, email, and report. It was painstaking work, but eventually we found something in email from Brad to the client in question, subtly suggesting that I had been manipulating the data. "This is it," I said, my heart racing. "This is the proof we need." Armed with this evidence, I went back to Mr. Thompson. He reviewed the email and nodded gravely. "This changes everything. We'll conduct a separate investigation into Brad's actions." It took another week, but eventually the truth came out. Brad had been fabricating evidence against me to tarnish my reputation and steal my position. He was fired, and my suspension was lifted. Returning to work was a bittersweet experience. While I was relieved to have my name cleared, the whole ordeal had left me feeling wary and mistrustful. But Sarah's unwavering support had been a beacon of light through the darkest times. As we celebrated the end of the investigation with a quiet dinner at home, I looked at Sarah and realized how lucky I was to have her by my side. "I couldn't have done this without you," I said, taking her hand. "We are a team," she replied, her eyes shining with love. "No matter what comes our way, we'll face it together." Life began to return to normal, but the experience had left its mark. I was more cautious at work, double-checking everything and being careful about who I trusted. But I also felt a renewed sense of gratitude for the stability and happiness Sarah and I had built together. Just as things were settling down, life threw us another curveball. One evening, Sarah sat me down with a nervous look on her face. "Dopagoy, there's something I need to tell you." I felt a pang of anxiety. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "I am pregnant." The words hung in the air, and I felt a rush of emotions, joy, surprise, and a touch of fear. "Are you serious?" She nodded, a smile breaking through her nervousness. "Yes, we are going to have a baby." I pulled her into my arms, overwhelmed with happiness. "That is incredible news, Sarah. We're going to be parents." As we embraced, I knew that despite the challenges and uncertainties, we had each other. And now, we had a new adventure to look forward to, a future filled with love, hope, and new beginnings. The news of Sarah's pregnancy filled our lives with excitement and anticipation. Suddenly, our world was full of baby books, Dr. S appointments, and discussions about names and nursery themes. Despite the challenges we had faced, this new chapter felt like a fresh start, and we were determined to embrace it fully. One Saturday morning, Sarah and I went to a local bookstore to pick up some parenting books. As we browsed the aisles, I noticed a familiar figure in the corner of my eye, Emily. She was standing with a man, laughing and looking happier than I had ever seen her. Part of me felt a twinge of bitterness, but another part was relieved. It seemed she had moved on, just as I had. "Dopagoy, look at this," Sarah said, pulling me out of my thoughts. She was holding up a book titled What to Expect When You Were Expecting. "This looks like a good one." "Yeah, it does," I agreed, taking the book from her and flipping through the pages. "Let's get it." As we headed to the checkout counter, I couldn't help but glance back at Emily. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and she gave me a small nod, as if acknowledging that we were both on new paths now. I returned the gesture and turned back to Sarah, feeling a sense of closure. Over the next few months, our lives became a whirlwind of preparations. We painted the nursery a soft pastel color, assembled the crib, and bought all the baby essentials. Each step brought us closer together, and our excitement grew with each passing day. One evening, as we were assembling a baby swing, Sarah paused and looked at me with a serious expression. "Dopagoy, I've been thinking about something." "What is it?" I asked, tightening a screw. "I know we're both excited about the baby, but I want to make sure we don't lose sight of our relationship," she said. "It's important that we stay connected and support each other through this." I put down the screwdriver and took her hands in mine. "You're right, Sarah. We need to make time for each other, even when things get hectic." We decided to set aside one evening a week as a date night, a time for just the two of us to reconnect and enjoy each other's company. It was a simple commitment, but it made a world of difference. As Sarah's due date approached, I found myself growing more nervous. I wanted to be the best husband and father I could be, but the weight of responsibility was daunting. Sarah, ever the calming presence, reassured me that we would figure it out together. One night, as we lay in bed, I voiced my fears. What if I am not a good father? What if I mess up? Sarah squeezed my hand. "Dopagoy, you are going to be an amazing father. We'll make mistakes, sure, but we'll learn from them, and we'll have each other." Her words eased my anxiety, and I fell asleep with a sense of peace. But that peace was short-lived. Early one morning, Sarah shook me awake, her face contorted in pain. "It's his time," she gasped. "The baby is coming." Panic and excitement surged through me as I jumped out of bed and grabbed the hospital bag we had packed weeks earlier. We rushed to the hospital, and the next few hours were a blur of contractions, breathing exercises, and comforting words. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, our baby girl was born. As I held her for the first time, tears streamed down my face. She was perfect, and in that moment, all my fears melted away. I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together as a family. In the weeks that followed, our home was filled with the sounds of coos and cries, sleepless nights, and endless diaper changes. It was exhausting, but every time I looked at Sarah and our daughter, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and love. One afternoon, as I rocked our baby to sleep, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The betrayal, the heartache, the uncertainty it had all led to this moment. And while the road had been rocky, it had also made me stronger and more appreciative of the life we were building. Sarah joined me on the couch, leaning her head on my shoulder. "Can you believe we are parents?" she whispered. I smiled, looking down at our sleeping daughter. It is still sinking in, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. As we sat there, wrapped in the warmth of our little family, I knew that we had truly found our way. Life would continue to throw challenges our way, but with Sarah and our daughter by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The first few months of parenthood were a whirlwind. Sarah and I were adjusting to the constant demands of caring for a newborn, but despite the sleepless nights and endless feedings, we found joy in every moment. Our daughter, whom we named Lily, was a source of constant wonder and love. One evening, after we had finally gotten Lily to sleep, Sarah and I collapsed on the couch, exhausted but content. "Can you believe how much our lives have changed?" she asked, resting her head on my shoulder. "I know," I replied, wrapping my arm around her. "It is incredible, and I wouldn't change a thing." As the weeks turned into months, we settled into a routine. I returned to work, but made sure to be home as much as possible to help Sarah and spend time with Lily. Sarah, who was on maternity leave, juggled the challenges of motherhood with grace and resilience. We supported each other, sharing responsibilities and ensuring we had moments to connect as a couple. One afternoon, as I was working from home, I received an unexpected email from Emily. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. "Dopagoy, I hope you and Sarah are doing well. I wanted to reach out to apologize again for everything that happened. I know my actions caused you a lot of pain, and I deeply regret it. I have been doing a lot of reflecting and working on myself, and I hope one day you can forgive me. Take care, Emily." I stared at the screen, my emotions a mix of surprise, relief, and closure. It had taken a long time, but I realized I had already forgiven Emily. Her email felt like the final piece of the puzzle, allowing me to fully move on. That evening, I showed the email to Sarah. She read it carefully, then looked at me with a gentle smile. "How do you feel about it?" "I think I am finally at peace with everything," I admitted. "It's time to let go of the past completely." "I am glad," Sarah said, squeezing my hand. "We have so much to look forward to." As Lily grew, we experienced all her firsts together, her first smile, her first laugh, her first steps. Each milestone was a reminder of the life we had built and the love that surrounded us. We celebrated her first birthday with a small party, filled with laughter and joy. Our friends and family were a constant source of support. Mike, my best friend, became Lily's godfather, and he was a frequent visitor, always ready to lend a hand or offer a word of advice. One sunny afternoon, Sarah and I took Lily to the park. As she toddled around exploring her surroundings, I watched her with a sense of awe. "Can you believe how fast she is growing?" I asked Sarah. "It feels like just yesterday she was a tiny newborn," Sarah replied, her eyes shining with pride. As we sat on a bench watching Lily play, Sarah turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Dopagoy, I've been thinking about going back to work soon, but I'm also considering starting my own business." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Really? What kind of business?" "I've always loved photography," she said, "and I've been thinking about starting a family photography business, capturing moments like these for other families." "That sounds amazing," I said, smiling. "I think you'd be great at it." With my support, Sarah began to pursue her dream. She took online courses, invested in professional equipment, and started building a portfolio. I helped her set up a website and promote her services. It was inspiring to see her passion and creativity come to life. Balancing work, parenthood, and Sarah's new business venture was challenging, but we found a rhythm that worked for us. Our love for each other and our commitment to our family kept us grounded. One evening, after a particularly busy day, Sarah and I sat on the porch, sipping tea and enjoying the quiet. "I never imagined our lives would turn out this way," she said, looking out at the sunset. "Me neither," I replied, taking her hand. "But I'm grateful for every twist and turn that brought us here." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we watched the sky change colors. "No matter what happens, we'll face it together," she said softly. "Always." I agreed. As the years passed, we continued to grow and evolve as a family. Lily started school, Sarah's business flourished, and I found fulfillment in my career. We made time for each other, ensuring that our relationship remained strong and vibrant. Reflecting on our journey, I realized that life is full of unexpected challenges and beautiful surprises. Through it all, the love and support we shared had been our anchor. Together, we had built a life filled with love, laughter, and resilience. And as we faced the future, I knew that whatever came our way, we would face it as a family, united and strong. Time seemed to fly by as we navigated the ups and downs of life. Lily was growing into a bright and curious little girl. Sarah's photography business was thriving, and my career was back on track. We were busier than ever, but our home was filled with laughter and love, a testament to the strength of our bond. One crisp autumn evening, as the leaves turned brilliant shades of red and gold, we decided to have a family picnic at our favorite park. Lily was thrilled, running around and collecting leaves while Sarah and I set up a blanket and unpacked the food. As we enjoyed our meal, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we had come. The hardships and heartaches of the past felt like distant memories, overshadowed by the happiness we had found together. "Daddy, look at this leaf," Lily exclaimed, holding up a particularly vibrant specimen. "Wow, that is beautiful, Lily," I said, smiling at her enthusiasm. "You have a great eye for nature." Sarah watched us with a serene expression, her camera in hand, capturing the moment. "We should frame some of these photos," she suggested. "They'd make wonderful memories to look back on." "I agree," I said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. These moments are priceless. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the park, we lay back on the blanket, gazing up at the sky. Lily snuggled between us, her eyelids growing heavy. "Do you ever think about what the future holds?" Sarah asked softly, her head resting on my shoulder. "All the time," I replied, "and I know that whatever comes our way, we'll face it together." She smiled, tracing a finger along my arm. "I am so grateful for our life, Dopagoy. I love you. I love you too, Sarah," I said, leaning in to kiss her gently. More than words can express. In the months that followed, we continued to cherish every moment. Lily started kindergarten, a milestone that brought both excitement and a touch of nostalgia. We watched with pride as she made new friends and discovered her love for learning. Sarah's business grew, attracting more clients who were drawn to her talent for capturing the beauty and essence of family life. She was in high demand, but she always made time for us, balancing her work with her role as a loving wife and mother. One evening, as we sat together after putting Lily to bed, Sarah shared an idea that had been on her mind. "Dopagoy, I've been thinking about expanding the business," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I want to open a small studio where I can offer more services and hire a few assistants." "That sounds like a fantastic idea," I said, thrilled by her ambition. "How can I help?" "Just having your support means everything to me," she said, smiling warmly. "But if you could help with the logistics and planning, that would be amazing." We spent the next few weeks drawing up plans, scouting locations, and working out the details. It was a lot of work, but seeing Sarah's dream come to life was incredibly rewarding. Finally, the day came for the grand opening of her studio. Friends, family, and clients gathered to celebrate, and the atmosphere was filled with joy and excitement. Sarah gave a heartfelt speech, thanking everyone for their support and sharing her vision for the future. As I watched her speak, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride and love. She had come so far, and her determination and passion were truly inspiring. Later that night, after the festivities had ended and we were back home, we sat together on the porch, reflecting on the day's events. "I'm so proud of you, Sarah," I said, wrapping my arm around her. "You've achieved something incredible." "Thank you, Dopagoy," she said, resting her head on my shoulder. "I couldn't have done it without you." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the night air cool and refreshing. The stars twinkled above us, and I felt a profound sense of contentment. "What's next for us?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with curiosity and hope. Whatever it is, we'll face it together, I replied, kissing her forehead. Our journey is just beginning. As we embraced the future, I knew that life would continue to bring its challenges and surprises. But with Sarah and Lily by my side, I felt ready for anything. Our love and resilience had carried us through the darkest times, and I was confident that together we could weather any storm. The road ahead was full of possibilities, and I looked forward to every twist and turn, knowing that our family would face it all with strength, love, and unwavering support for one another.